My auto. We're good.
Hello, good afternoon, friends. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me there in the back? Hello and welcome. The objective of today's lunch, and indeed everything that the Global Communicators Collective does, is to allow for conversations to happen. So I always hate breaking up a conversation because that seems it's antithetical to the mission that we have. But for a few moments, I'd like to just call you to attention, if we may. I would like to say hello to everyone who's joined us here in Washington, D.C. on what I think you'll agree is probably a perfect Washington, D.C. day in terms of the weather. There's a lot of activity where we are in this section of town. I don't know if it's things happening at the bank or things happening at the White House, but it's a really exciting environment here today. And we're excited that you're here today and grateful that you're here today, that you're joining us. We're also grateful that there are those online who are joining us via the live stream. These days, we're very good at joining things on live stream after the pandemic and what we needed to do, but we want you to be active partners, to meet our guest of honor and these ideas that we'll be sharing today. My name is Aaron Sherinian, and I'm in my assignment today with the Global Communicators Collective to help moderate and begin this event. As you know, if you know me professionally, I represent the Desert Management Corporation as well as the Radiant Foundation, two organizations that are near and dear to my heart for their important missions that include bringing people together and helping people have access to light and truth, and bringing together the sectors of faith and media. But we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about bridges and bridges of understanding. And what I'd like to submit today as we begin is first and foremost, remind folks of the ground rules. The ground rules is that you be comfortable. The only thing we require of you is that you come with an open mind to meet someone new. We'd like you to please enjoy your lunch. For those of you here in the dining room, so please enjoy. We need to be nourished, so please go ahead. The food will be coming as we discuss. We'd like to also remind you that what we'll do today includes a question and answer period. And our guest of honor, that I will introduce in just a few moments. You all have her bio, you all know who she is. But she will entertain a few moments of Q&A with us, so we hope you'll participate. Now, the topic that we're going to go over today proves an important point. It's impossible to have the worlds of culture and communications in two separate rooms. That can't be right. Communicators know that culture plays a part in everything that we do. And whether that is any aspect of culture, the arts, whether it is anything related to how civil society interacts with a local culture, those are important bridges. And those are bridges that coexist together with great communication. Well, we have today an important guest with us. And the Qatar America Institute for Culture, if you visit it, we're going to resend you their link, outlines for you how they're communicating about culture. And it's a bridge. It's a bridge of understanding, a bridge of events and opportunities. We're pleased that the director from this organization, Fatima Al-Dosari, is with us today. And we're grateful that she's going to take us on a bit of her journey, and a journey about the organization, and a journey about a culture that is doing great things to help create more bridges so that we all can be a part of that culture in the Muslim and Arab world, culture that we share among us, culture and signals and parts of our society that are just important parts of being human. So with that, we ask Fatima to please come and give us some remarks, to come jog some ideas, and we look forward to learning more from her and learning from our dialogue together. Please help me in welcoming Fatima Al-Dosari to the floor.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for this beautiful introduction. I feel like I can't add to the beautiful introduction you did about culture and communication, but it's a great segue for us to further the conversation that I hope that we'll be having today among friends and new colleagues. And first of all, I want to thank again the GCC, I love the acronym, GCC, for hosting me and for inviting me today to join. And also, I would like to thank all our friends here today, the new and the old, who are joining us from the cake side, but also who are joining us from the GCC side as well. And also, I want to extend our thanks to our audience who, as Aaron mentioned, joining us online. It will be a wonderful opportunity for us to have more of the reach that we want for people to better understand what we do and what the GCC does as well. A little bit about me, or let me just start with the ad that everyone saw that GCC created. It had the verbal communication of the title, which just disappeared, but many of you remember, bridging communities through cross-cultural communication, collaboration, using visual, culinary, and olfactory arts as a common language. This is a very verbal, straightforward communication that might have attracted many of you today. But another nonverbal communication that might have interested you to come today was probably my photo, thinking that how to pronounce her country's name. Is it Qatar, Qatar? How can we say it right? How do we pronounce her name? Is it Fatima? Is it Fatima? Also thinking of my hijab, my headscarf. Was she forced to wear it? Did she choose to wear it? Is it very common to wear it from where she comes from? So there's a way, again, of nonverbal communication that was communicated through that ad. And that's how I think in general, as organizations, we can balance between both and how we can, in a way, also represent our cultures. So I come from a small country called Qatar, but Qatar in Arabic. None of the syllables exist in the English language, but anything is valid. From Qatar, where in a very young age, I knew that I was a minority in my own country. So Qatari citizens are 300,000 or less in the world. So there are 300,000 of me in this world. And I felt that this was such a privilege to come from a small country that provided so many opportunities for me growing up. And also some responsibility. So I felt that I needed, as my country was growing and its ambition was growing, I needed also to be able to support that ambition by being more hospitable, by representing my culture, by being more grateful to the opportunities that are given to me, and by being a good ambassador in general for my country. So growing up, I never thought that I would call myself as a communications professional. I found myself, I had a very nonlinear, non-traditional path where my background was mostly in STEAM, or I would say actually STEM, not even STEAM. So I was an engineer by background who found herself switching majors to international affairs because I wanted to understand the world better and be understood better. And while doing that, I was also volunteering in the Non-Native for Arabic language program in my university, which really helped me to build a lot of connections and relationships with students that mostly were actually from the US. And that helped me to better understand and celebrate the beautiful facets that were from the American culture, like Thanksgiving. My first Thanksgiving was with my friends who were from Peace College, which is in North Carolina. And it was an only women's school. So it was really interesting to see how much Qatar and the US had in common, even before me traveling to the US. And then I started working at Al Jazeera. Many of you probably know the name. It's a media network that is based in Qatar. And I started working right at the beginning of the Arab Spring, if anyone remembers the Arab Spring. It was a very exciting time for someone who just freshly graduated from college to just jump in and be responsible for monitoring all of the, and fact-checking and policing, like all the content that the network was used to get on its digital platforms. And to also learn more as I was spending time, at my organization. I got to be part of the, back then there were plans to do Al Jazeera Swahili, for example, in Swahili language. So that was an area where I did not speak the language, but I wanted to better understand the culture of the communities there, so we know how we can better represent them. Same thing for AJ Plus and Al Jazeera America. We wanted to understand our audience. We wanted to understand the cultures where we wanted to customize the experience for, and also to create content for. So that journey took me to also be more intrigued to learn more about how do I use communication tools, especially like digital tools today. And I decided to move to the US to join Georgetown's Communication, Culture, and Technology program called CCT. And it was a wonderful experience that I got to enjoy a different academic even experience than what I used to, because in Arab cultures, we're used to more memorization and less about what the professors say. But in America, I was really challenged to be a critical thinker. And I found that the Chinese students who were in my class, the Arab students who were in my class, most of us, like from Eastern cultures and Asian cultures, had a very common trait of being less, outspoken as our American colleagues and our American classmates. And that really made many of us just push, to be outside of our comfort zone and start speaking our minds more, and also to do more research about the things that we really liked. And I really loved how my professors encouraged and appreciated the values and the culture I come from. And they also encouraged me to do more research about, the Middle East and about Qatar in specific. And I got to study an experience or a phenomenon that I personally experienced growing up in Qatar as a minority in my country, which is called, probably many of you as communications professionals know, it's called muted group theory or a spiral of silence. These are two theories that I focused on in my capstone project. And I just wanted to look at these theories from the practical lens of how Qatari citizens between 2012 or 2010, when Qatar won the World Cup bid, to 2014, when I joined school and I started my research project till 2016, how things have been portrayed about Qataris on media and how labor work, like for example, labor rights and minority group rights and all these things were portrayed in media in the light of Qatari citizens and the laws of the country, and how that reaction, made the general perception about the culture. So I did a lot of experimenting there, a lot of surveys. It was really interesting time and really interesting research paper. I also got to do a whole group research project on robotic camel jockeys. I don't know if any of you have ever heard that there's actually a robot that is used as a camel jockey, and it was used to replace human jockeys, which was, part of a tradition, long-term tradition for centuries in the Middle East, and particularly in Arab Gulf countries. And that switched to using robotic camel jockeys, which is a Qatari invention. And I got even to interview the scientists who developed that robot, which made me feel very proud that, my country is not only rich with its natural resources, but also with its cultural heritage, with its technological, innovation, and with its, focus on just looking for the future and developing the country with its capital, a human capital. If that human capital was from the country itself by its citizens, or also from the immigrants who live in Qatar. So after that, I was in the US for a very long time and saw how much representation of who I am was lacking. So I moved from being a minority in my country to a minority in America. And I did not feel really how different it was till I started going to the Smithsonian, to the museums, and seeing how the authentic voice and representation of who I am today was lacking. So I wanted to start something that represents me and my generation. I wanted to stop this stereotype of looking at the Middle East as a conflict zone, of looking at Middle Eastern women as oppressed, of looking at the Middle East at large as a place that is hopeless. I wanted people to see how much our generation is very powerful with its ambition and ideas and creativity, and it is a generation of hope. So that made me really develop the idea of creating a contemporary space for Islamic art representing who I am and many people from my background. And that also developed, maybe you saw a picture with President Obama, who invited me to meet him after my friends delivered the ambitious plan that I had. But at that point, in 2016, with the transition in the administration, I wanted to stop and not politicize my project. I wanted it to come from a place where it was heartfelt as much as I wanted it to be. So it was not the right time. Then in 2017, there was more of a national need for me to support my country because again, there are just 300,000 people of me, and not many of us are vocal. As Qataris, as I said, we do experience being muted. We do experience being in this spiral of silence in the middle of the media. So very few of us who like to speak up. And I think it's very common also, even in American culture, with a lot of people from minorities feeling that they can't speak up. So during that time, I joined the Qatar America Institute by a total coincidence through my passion for art and culture and basically helping Americans to fall in love with my culture and for me to fall more in love with their culture, just like how I wanted to do it with my family members and my close friends who I've known for years. And this is me at the Oscars. Thanks, okay. And continuing that journey in 2020, this was February, and everyone knows where we were in February 2020. We went for the very first time with the Doha Film Institute and found out that Hollywood, as the main production hub for entertainment and filmmaking, not just for America, but for the entire world, had a very, very narrow understanding and representation of people from Arab descent. And whenever I spoke with someone from Hollywood about international films, they were just talking about Eastern films. And that time, everyone was very focused on the Korean film, I forget. It was a very famous Korean film. But everyone was very focused on East Asian films. So we made a partnership with the Doha Film Institute to champion Arab voices and storytelling. And we started having screenings at QAI. And then with the transition, we also faced a universal global challenge, which was the pandemic. So in 2020, we moved to a new space, and I wanted to see beyond the pandemic. Although I didn't know if it was a beyond pandemic. Everyone in 2020, in February or March, felt that was the end of it. But we were able, to move there, and with patience and a lot of strategic thinking, we were able to kind of renovate the whole space and also refounding the organization and focus more on art and culture, because I saw how much the past, from the time I joined the organization in 2018 and 2019, people always were curious to ask me questions about my culture. Why do you wear black in your country and men wear white? Why do you have the South Asian karak or the chai as your national drink? Why, a lot of questions were just more focused on culture. And that made me think that this is such a common ground and very soft way, it is soft power after all, that helps people to better understand my culture. So after that, I got the keys for the building, and I was very excited. And I felt that I birthed my first child. That was my first child. The organization is. And then this is my real biological first child a year later. And she is a Qatari American. My husband is American. And back to the point where I said, I want Americans to fall in love with my culture, it's because I saw how much he appreciated my culture and respected my culture. And that kind of respect was very mutual and is very mutual and is helping us also to learn more about each other's cultures and find the common things as well. And that was a very fun day when she went for the first time there, because she continued asking till today to go to the office. She was an inspiration, and just seeing things through her perspective and what can be beneficial for the new generations on experiencing, art and culture made us really think differently. Especially also, I think, for communicators, thinking about bridging cultures, or how do we communicate our organizations or ourselves today, post-pandemic, is a question, and I'm still learning. And I think many of us are relearning now that, because what used to be common before might not be very common or applicable now. And especially if we want to move from cross-cultural communication, which has one dominant culture over the other as definition, to intercultural communication, which provides equal representation and understanding of all cultures equally. So this was actually one of the most successful, let's say, traveling exhibitions that we had. And it was in 2021, while still the pandemic was a thing, at Western Kentucky in Bowling Green University. No one would ever expect that Kentucky would have the largest Arabic language program in the South. And we got the privilege to go there and meet with the students, especially this area was impacted or has been impacted for a very long time by tornadoes and natural disasters. So it really gave us a different perspective to also focus on, the larger American audience that is impacted and that comes from, low income backgrounds or disadvantaged backgrounds, and how can we be that bridge to support them with opportunities, because helping someone to change their context is not easy and it requires a collective effort. So we tried our best to provide them with an opportunity, and even many of them joined a fellowship program that we provided to help us in translating an Arabic app for the White House. So we have now provided Arabic language as the third language available for any visitors to the White House. And it's an Arabic language. And those students, American students, helped us in translating the app. And we hope that, actually one of them got just recently Fulbright, I believe, fellowship, and she's traveling abroad to the Middle East. So I feel very proud. We're still very connected with them. We feel very proud of them, and they will always be part of our family. And we hope that we will continue, such traveling exhibitions that will allow us to learn about the cities we visit, but also for them to learn, because it's, a mutual learning experience, and that's the essence of the exchange as well. I like to focus internally always on my team, and I believe that my team team members are also stakeholders in what we do, more than just focusing externally on our communications and just, on our external audience. And I just love to host iftar, which is, the breaking of the fast in Ramadan every year, at least once, because my husband and I are transplants. He's from Seattle, I'm from Doha. So we're both, we don't have an extended family in DC, but this gives us the opportunity to celebrate and share part of our, traditions with my team, who always, loved also to be part of that. Now, if you remember the title, we said olfactory art. A lot of people for the first time probably they hear what is olfactory art, and it's related to the senses and to the perfumes. So when we moved in our space, and if you remember, thinking about how do we communicate our cultures now post-pandemic? I really wanted to have something that will involve people. I truly believe, I think in Benjamin Franklin's words, teach me, it's tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And I want people to learn. And through having experiences that involve people, we hope that they will be able to learn more from their firsthand experiences about what we represent. So we created an olfactory program that includes a perfumery museum, which is a permanent space in our building. And it has both the historical component, but also the contemporary component that we created in-house with the team. And people get to experience and ask questions all the time. Like, for example, I remember Susan told me that her first time when she came to the building and she smelled frankincense, she couldn't identify the scent, but it immediately took her to church and made her think of that very intimate moment and something very, very deep. And this is kind of also what we try to do with all the members who visit us. Like one of our honorary trustees is Naeem Khan, the American Indian designer, and when he came to the space also for the first time, he smelled jasmine. He immediately recognized that it immediately took him to his childhood in India with his grandfather and how they celebrated that as a part of their Friday ritual. So this is what we try to connect with. This is one of our strongest communication tools. We want to connect in a much, much deeper level with people to help them understand beyond, the verbal words, beyond what they see in banners, beyond the magazine, which I hope you all enjoyed taking time with you today. And also, beyond the visual component. It just takes them very deeply into the subconscious and, the senses. And speaking about senses, another element that was in the title is culinary. And we got for the very first time to participate in the DC Chef Challenge after they reopened after the pandemic last year. And this is one of my dear friends and Qatari creative, Chef Noah Murray, who has an amazing cafe at the National Museum. This is free advertisement. If you go to Doha, you have to try it. And she's very innovative. Every time she travels somewhere, she tries to incorporate something native from that culture into her cuisine. She participated and she represented Qatar for the very first time. We always, because we don't have a lot of Qatari chefs or interest or knowledge of Qatari cuisine, which is very similar to the GCC cuisine at large. People just don't get to experience it here in the US. If you ask about Qatari dishes, or I don't know if many of you experienced Saudi food when we had the Dira and Tyson. So they had a mix of real authentic Saudi dishes, but also Middle Eastern, because that satisfies the general, interest and appetite and what people are familiar with. So one thing I love about her is that she pushes boundaries, that she wants people to understand that authentic cuisine and the flavor profile, but still in a contemporary way. So, and this is what we try and aspire to always do. Maintain that authenticity, maintain that meaningful messaging, maintain that meaningful, heartfelt connection, but presented in a different, more contemporary way for the general consumer to better understand that. And with that, this is how you can follow us. And I hope, again, this will be the first of many to come. And I'm very thankful for all of you for coming today. Special thanks to Cake's Director of Communications, Susan, for introducing me to the GCC. And I'm very open to questions, and I hope I'll be able to answer all the questions.
Thank you, Fatima. Keep that microphone because you're going to use it. And I'm going to invite you to come a little bit closer in. We're going to see if maybe that helps with our sound a little bit. So our friends on the live stream, maybe we'll come a little bit, maybe to this side if you can. Does that work? Okay. But I'm so glad that you mentioned the Cake staff. Does this work?
Perfect, stellar.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the Cake staff. They've been such a pleasure to work with. I made a mistake in preparing for this. Whoops. No, I'm not ready. Does yours work?
Thanks.
Okay, great. So I made a mistake. How's that? I assumed wrongly that I knew what you were going to teach us because I know the website, I know Susan, I know Kay, I love Qatar. So I assumed I knew what was going to happen today, even as a communicator. But I don't know if you all heard it, but Fatima gave us a communications masterclass specifically for cultural communicators a couple of minutes ago. You know, the State Department's down the block, and every museum in town thinks they've understood it better than we have. But that idea that cross-cultural communication sometimes is culturally at someone, instead of celebrating culture with others, was a profound moment in this room. So I think in this historic building, we should count it among the historic and important things that have been said here, because there have been many women hosting many important gatherings in this, the Bacon Mansion, now the Bacon House. So thank you for that. Along those lines, I'm going to pose the first question, if you don't mind. And then I know we will have questions, and I will come find you. Because as you know, my favorite verb is to volunteer. Voluntel. That's right, it's voluntelling that I like to do. So the first question relates to this intercultural communication. You were very honest and open with us, and you seem very comfortable with who you are. So one of the things that's clear, right? You're very comfortable as a Qatari, you're very comfortable as someone who lives in America, as a mother, as an executive, as many things. What is it when you interact with people here in the United States? What is it that you find to be the thing that makes Americans comfortable in who they are? I'm curious as your perspective. Are we a people who are as comfortable as we are, as you are, as a person of culture, of faith, of family? What is your perspective about how Americans portray themselves? How is it that we do a job in portraying who it is to be American? And then I think with that, we'll take some questions to Fatima. So over to you. I hope that's okay that I put you on the spot.
Yeah,
you know us, but as someone who's so genuinely comfortable in who she is, how can we
I was trying to shake her.
how can we learn from your example as American, as people in the United States of America? By the way, I didn't count. There are 12 nations represented in the room today. America's a great place, right? This dining room is a global place. So over to you with this question. Thank you.
I think I'll take the last thing you just said. America's a great place. And this always shows in Americans, whether in a good way or a bad way, Americans they're very proud that America is diverse. America is exceptional, which sometimes, I think especially for the academics, they would go on and on talking about that. But I think even traveling abroad, people think Americans travel a lot, but I think in comparison to European countries or other Western countries, not a lot of Americans have exposure to outside, the continent of the USA. And I can't blame them. America is beautiful. I've traveled to over 40 states, coast to coast. Actually went on a road trip in 2018 from DC to Sedona and back. And I've seen the country, when it comes to its natural beauty, to its diversity, it's one of the most unique places, I think, on earth. And I think Americans do always feel that sense of pride. And as I said, sometimes it can be in a good way, and other times it can be in a negative way. And one thing that I would always also think is that there's an interest in learning, and from its historical, from a more historical point of view, America was founded on being, diverse as well. So in a way, I think for also the more exposed people from the Middle East, or the ones who travel, they become more aware of that, and they know how America has a lot in common with the Middle East, and just thinking of recent history. And this is something that, as someone who lives here and who has a child who's American, I also try to be a representative of Americans as well, and to communicate that to, I go to Qatar or I meet with people from the Middle East to better understand Americans and how there's much more for them to learn, right? So I've traveled to Nebraska and Austin, Texas by myself, and I felt very, very safe. I even went to the jazz festival in New Orleans as a graduation gift for myself.
That's a good gift.
Yes, yes. Because it was in my bucket list and I really wanted to do it, you know. So, and all these travels were by myself in my hijab, visibly Muslim woman, and I never experienced any kind of alhamdulillah. I never experienced any racism or any kind of xenophobic, you know, comments or anyone. On the contrary, I saw like when I went to Nebraska, people were very more hospitable and, you know, that kind of chivalry. People still open the doors. No one opens the doors in DC anymore. So, you know, I still experience, you know, that it's just, you know, America has so much, I think, to offer, and there's more of a sense of responsibility, I think, to Americans to show the world that beautiful diversity that the country has. And I would say just start traveling more. Americans need to get out of the country and go to Qatar as a first.
So this idea that in order to be more comfortable as a culture, oftentimes it means going out and experiencing other.
Yes.
Thank you. Great way to start this through. I do have a question from LinkedIn, but I'm going to go to it later. I do. Not from LinkedIn itself, but via. Does anyone have a question they'd like to pose, Fatima, at this stage? So, thank you, Russell.
I've spent probably the best part of 30 years on untapped human potential in my career, and I've worked cross-culturally around the world. And there's a case to make to say that an organization must be aware of the culture of the so-called when you're launching an organization into first-generation capital type environment from a sixth-generation capitalist organization, their sensitivities and so on. And I get that argument, and I think it's very important. I'm interested in your insight or thoughts on the other side of that equation. To what extent do we, as a minority, and I've been a minority in various aspects, do I need to give myself permission to step up, to express? And how do you think in your mind is the best way to measure what is the right mix?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question, Russell. Thank you so much for bringing this up. And I think it's a challenge, to be honest, because as I mentioned before, like a lot of groups, minority groups will experience being muted, experience being, if their views are not the dominant, then they will go to the bottom of, you know, the spiral and they cannot speak up.
Right.
But I think we are so lucky today that we live in an era where we have digital media, where if you can just go out to the street and say how you feel, especially if you need lessons for protesting or anything, you will need to, you can just freely express yourself online. And I've actually experienced that. Back in the day, as I mentioned, I've been very involved in labor worker issues in Qatar, and I try to find a very positive way and a different communication media that will interest people more. So if anyone wrote for our song Happy.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. So the year when it was the year when it was still viral, I worked with a Qatari group to create a video that got very very popular to celebrate International Workers' Day. And we did this very spontaneous experience where we walked just to the streets without any license, without getting any permits, and talked to any worker we saw, like a pizza worker, like a pizza, worker in a restaurant, a cleaner in Suqwaqif, a group of workers who were outside of their shifts playing cricket in one of the parking lots, and people just got involved and people got more interested, to speak their minds, but through dance, right? They wanted to show one way of how they feel through performative art. So I think, in a way, talking about communications and how through different cultural lenses we can experience or kind of be more vocal about how we feel and how we represent, our own kind of identity, and I think that's what's important. But I think it's a challenge. I agree with you. It took me a long time to get to where I am today. It's not easy, and sometimes it's still challenging. But I think, again, a post-pandemic reality is bringing a lot of opportunities as much as it was a limitation. And it's a way for us all to find, the collective that we belong to. And I think there are a lot of also phrases about how there's more strength in unity. So maybe finding more people who can be more like you, and like all the communicators in this group, for example, who can, be that way of support to show who you really are. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yeah, I've seen that in Jeddah. 6-7 years ago, it was a different story.
Yeah.
And now they're giving themselves permission to express and say, no, that's my opinion, that's how I feel, etc. And I think we're getting there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Fatima. I know that tonight, I can't wait for tonight when I write in my journal. I get to write that I was part of a conversation that went from frankincense to Pharrell. It looks like
I love
at this
that.
point we've gone entire,
Yeah.
that entire, but we still have some more to do. I need to pose the question because there's someone who wanted to be here who could not, and I want to keep this friendship. So if you would, what is the thing that most shocks people when you introduce Qatar to them?
Interesting.
Shocks was the verb.
Shocks.
All right, but what is the thing that most surprises people with your mission for culinary arts, olfactory arts, the cultural connections? What is the thing that most surprising?
I mean, I can go very, very basic, that the country exists. Some people still don't know that the country exists, saying that it's the only country with Q without the U shocks people as well. It's the only country with a Q. And yeah, it's just sometimes very, very basic, just knowing, I still get that, or I would say pre-November 2022, before the World Cup. Because the World Cup really gave the country a different, branding. And before World Cup, people used to ask me, where is it? And I have to go sometimes all the way. Depending on context, sometimes I defer not to mention a few countries that neighboring us, because I just don't want to get the wrong impression or association. But because I do believe Qatar, just as like America, is great and unique. So I want it to be different. And yeah, sometimes I have just to broaden the geographical location for people to understand where Qatar is. But it goes to that very basic level, where is that country? How do you, pronounce the country? Also, people have, as I said, a lot of, because of historical associations in neighboring countries, people think that women don't have rights, women don't drive, women, actually people still think that we ride camels.
Yeah, robots do that.
Exactly. Someone was listening. It's just there are a lot of stereotypes, I would say, but it starts with the question, where's this country at?
So a good reminder that we oftentimes jump to the nuance without reigniting the basic.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I know, I'm going to look at our communications challenges later on today with that. Are we reminding people where we are metaphorically on the map?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got time for another question, and we're going to do some wrap up. Yes, right here. I love the front tables here.
So I'm Bruce Dan, and my question is, you chose these nonverbal ways to communicate, either perfume or the smell, olfactory, and cuisine. How did you choose those particular ways to communicate? And the second part of that question is, how do I get myself invited to that room where I can smell all those wonderful smells?
Yeah. So for the second question,
Yes.
you're invited.
Thank you.
I would love to have you over. We actually open our first Fridays for the public every month, and we do our best to include really novel experiences. So June 24th, we have our annual summer festival where we celebrate Kate's birthday. And there will be a lot of things that will be included, including comedy festival, Arabic and American barbecue, And to celebrate the official opening of our newest exhibition, Forms of Wonder, we're gonna have a little bit of oysters as well, fancy. And we also, have a rich also roster of workshops and with filmmakers and great, also cultural creators. So we're very excited about that program, June 24th, as I said. And then July 7th will be the next first Friday. So we'd love to have you groups come over. And we're also open for appointments and whenever you want. Because back to your first question, what made me think of olfactory art, culinary art, and all that? I wanted to give a piece of Qatar. This is why we have, every time we come, we're giving a piece of cake. Not literally, cake, the organization. But we want to ensure that and this is part of my vision, I want people, when they come through our doors, to feel that sense of hospitality that they get in a Qatari home, and that they're part of an Arab family. Because I think many of you here who, like my colleague MK, who's American, went to Georgetown, went to an exchange program to Qatar, she has Qatari friends, went to their homes, fell in love with the culture and with the country through that authentic experience. So I want to do my best every time to recreate that experience for all our visitors to feel that they're part of the family. And when you come to a Qatari home, you're always offered food. You're always offered, bakhur or oud, which is the incense when you come inside. And this is, the whole kind of sensory experience that you get to experience when you walk to, again, someone's home in Qatar or the larger Arab and Islamic world that I want to have here in America. And for people to feel that this is their gateway, this is how they can experience my culture through the different kind of, facets that kind of embodies that culture in a way. If that makes sense.
Thank you. And there was an invite was extended. We also thank you and happy almost birthday next Saturday.
Yes.
We've heard a number of important things today, and I love this idea about using to this last question, why these particular issues, they break through.
Mm-hmm.
They break through when there are sectors. All of you here know that I love bringing the media sector closer together. Whether we're talking about industries or different groups break through, and sometimes these experiences, it sounds like, through the Institute of doing that. Now, I'm going to make an observation, and David Bellotti I've asked to offer kind of a wrap-up for us, and I know we're getting close to time, and the Q&A, the formal Q&A might end, but the networking continues as dessert comes in, et cetera. But as you mentioned the name of this exhibit that's coming in, and you made a sigh of relief, because this is how I wanted to conclude in thanking you. During my very first visit to Doha, I landed in what must be described as the most beautiful airport in the world. I don't know. If I'm flattering our guest, I am, because it's the truth, I think. I had a dental emergency right when I landed. So dumb. My fault. I had a dental emergency. So I found myself not with the group. The group went forward, the first time in the city. And the person who was taking care of me then arranged to be with me to bring me to the city. And I noted some of the architecture that I saw when I came to the city, and he started using the word pearl a lot. There was pearl describing with this thing, pearl describing another thing. The use of pearl was there all the time. I said, well, clearly, pearls are part of the culture. Explain it to me. He explained to me that it was a part of the history and the heritage of the culture. And he said something that I remember to this day, even though I was in pain. The dentist took care of me. But even though I was in pain and a lot of things were going on, I was in a new city, I was jet lagged. He said, it takes work to get a pearl. And in culture and in exchange, it clearly takes work, which includes great communications. You've given us some examples of that, how it's doable, but you have to be open. You talked to us about being genuine, about expanding the borders of things, and breaking outside. What you're doing at the Institute is not typical, but it's courageous. And so we're grateful for those items. I want to thank you for being with us the chance to be with you has been an honor. I'm gonna ask David to give us a keynote observation. He's the best listener in Washington DC, as well as one of the best writers.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
So David, wrap us up if you will. He's gonna give us some instructions on how we can connect with you, because we still have Fatima for a few minutes, I think, after to meet and greet with some people as well. So he's going to give the official conclusion, and then we will give you some applause from the heart. So David, over to you.
I think I ate your role, so I apologize. Yes, very much. Thank you. I'm reading a book on awe that surveys people across cultures about how they experience awe, and almost universally, it is when they see someone face a challenge and set their mind to it and overcome it. And that's what I felt during this. And I felt a little sense of awe inside of me. So the thing that I heard was, how do we be good ambassadors? Which is right for this space and for this town where they're on every street corner. Don't take that the wrong way. That's more than being a brand ambassador. It's more than being a brand messenger. Aaron used one of the words. It's about being hospitable. It's about being courageous. And it's about willing to challenge and be challenged as part of the process. So that's what I learned today, and I think it's something we can take. How do we exemplify the value of communication for good, which I think I get a sense is what you're about and the Institute is about, and what the Global Communicators Collective is about. So thank you for teaching all of us. It was, as they say, awesome, and I really mean that. I'd also like to thank my partners, Daniel and Christina, who and Douglas over here, who helps put these events together. I would like to thank Aaron. Aaron never gets enough credit. Aaron is our president for this year, and I work for Deseret Management Corporation, who also has a fantastic magazine, Deseret News. They do an unbelievable amount of work on that beautiful phrase, intercultural communications. They have a project called the Faith and Media Initiative, which deals with a lot of those challenges. So check out the Qatar America Institute for Culture, check out Deseret Management, and now talk a lot, share business cards. And when I send you the email about the next event, if you can't come, please pass it on. If you can come, please bring someone else, because we're going to exemplify being good conversationalists, good communicators, and being courageous in sharing what we know with other people. So thank you very much for being here, and have a good rest of the lunch. Thank you.